quorum being present, the Committee on Homeland Security, Subcommittee on Counterterrorism and Intelligence will come to order. The subcommittee is meeting today for consideration of H.R. 3361, the Department of Homeland Security Insider Threat and Mitigation Act of 2015, H.R. 3350, the Know the CBRN Terrorism Threats to Transportation Act, H.R. 3505, the Department of Homeland Security Clearance Management and Administration Act, H.R. 3503, the Department of Homeland Security Support to Fusion Centers Act of 2015, a committee print of the Fusion Center Enhancement Act of 2015. Let me just turn my phone off here. I don't want to in any way interrupt Mr. Higgins here. There we go. Brilliant. I now recognize myself for an opening statement. Today's markup is an opportunity to consider 5 measures designed to strengthen internal security within the Department of Homeland Security and address DHS's key responsibility for information sharing with state and local entities. These are vital issues to cover, and I am pleased that we have bipartisan support on all of the measures before us today. The first bill we will consider today is a bill which I introduced to authorize an insider threat program within the Department. Last Friday, our nation commemorated the anniversary of 9/11 and the lives lost in those attacks. For the last 14 years, millions of brave Americans from the armed forces, the FBI, CIA, NSA, DHS, and dozens of other federal agencies, as well as state and local partners, have worked tirelessly, domestically and abroad, to protect our nation from another attack. Complicating the difficult jobs has been a threat from within that has emerged over the past several years. Trusted individuals have committed traitorous acts which have done grave damage to U.S. national security. These appalling events have spotlighted the need for more rigorous programs to detect insider threats. PFC Bradley Manning is serving a 35-year sentence for turning over classified information to WikiLeaks. The next step is to prosecute Julian Assange, who published those documents. Former CIA analyst and current NSA contractor Edward Snowden continues to hide in Russia under the protection of Vladimir Putin as he seeks to escape prosecution for releasing thousands of classified documents on sensitive national security programs. On September 16, 2013, Aaron Alexis, a Department of Defense contractor, shot his way into the Washington, D.C. Navy Yard and killed 12 people. While none of these examples involved DHS or DHS personnel, all of these individuals were vetted, trusted U.S. security professionals who abused that trust and committed heinous acts. We have an obligation to ensure DHS has programs in place to defend against and identify potential insider threats. The bill we consider today provides a foundation for the Secretary to secure DHS facilities and its workforce. It creates a steering committee to coordinate insider threat efforts across the Department and the development of a holistic strategy for DHS to identify, prevent, mitigate, and respond to insider threats to its critical assets. An important element of any insider threat program is training and employee awareness. The bill requires both to ensure that personnel understand how their use of DHS networks will be monitored, as well as what workplace behavior may be indicative of a potential insider threat. This bill ensures that insider threat best practices are standardized and implemented across the entire DHS enterprise, and that all relevant stakeholders who possess information pertinent to insider threat have a seat at the table and contribute to the program's effectiveness. The second bill we would consider today was introduced by the ranking member, Mr. Higgins. I'm sorry, Mr. Higgins? No. Mr. Higgins requires DHS to conduct a terrorism threat assessment on the transportation of chemical, biological, nuclear, and radiological materials into and within the United States. I think security assessments such as these are important and should be part of commercial, environmental, and diplomatic decisions that are being made. I look forward to working with him on this bill. The third bill before us was introduced by the full committee ranking member, Mr. Thompson. The bill requires the Secretary to ensure that positions within DHS deemed to require a security clearance are assessed periodically to ensure the clearance is still necessary and that the standard to determine which positions need clearances is applied accurately across the DHS component agencies. The bill does not direct DHS to reduce the number of clearances, but rather an assessment to ensure that the current designations remain necessary. Additionally, the bill requires the Department to develop a plan to ensure that adjudications of eligibility for a security clearance are done across the Department. The fourth bill was introduced by Representative McSally and requires the Office of Intelligence and Analysis within the Department to conduct an assessment of the number and type of personnel assigned to fusion centers across the country. Additionally, the bill requires INA to establish a program to sponsor top-secret, sensitive classified information security clearances as appropriate for state and local analysts of fusion centers and report on whether this improves threat awareness and information sharing. One of the key takeaways from this subcommittee held in February regarding information sharing was that law enforcement and fusion center analysts need access to higher level clearances in order to understand the threat picture and make appropriate security decisions. The last measure we will consider is a committee print that revises portions of Section 210A of the Homeland Security Act to clarify the partnership between DHS and the National Network of Fusion Centers, including appropriate departmental support to fusion centers relating to information sharing and personnel. As with the McSally bill, this measure was developed with input from stakeholders, including law enforcement, fusion centers, representatives from the fire service, and others. Ensuring that threat information is shared between federal, state, and local agencies is critical to Homeland Security. This was a key lesson learned from the 9/11 terror attacks and unfortunately reinforced after the 2012 Boston Marathon bombing. I now recognize the ranking member of the subcommittee, my friend from New York, Mr. Higgins, for an opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the opportunity to consider these legislative measures today. Together, these 5 measures advance the important goals of making the Department more effective and enhancing the security of our nation. The first one I'd like to discuss is H.R. 3350, the known CBRN Threats to Transportation Act, a bill introduced in July that speaks to a timely Homeland Security concern. Terrorist and militant groups have expressed an interest in using weapons of mass destruction, especially chemical, biological, and radiological, and nuclear materials to carry out attacks. My bill addresses the threat associated with transporting of such materials on our roadways and across our land borders. It does so by specifically directing the Office of Intelligence and Analysis to conduct an assessment of the risks associated with the transportation of chemical, biological, nuclear, and radiological materials. The other Democratic-sponsored bill we will consider is H.R. 3505, the Department of Homeland Security Clearance Management and Administration Act, as introduced by Ranking Member Thompson. It seeks to improve how the Department goes about managing its security clearance process and, if enacted, has the potential of not only improving how the Department administers its clearance program, but by requiring the Department to do a better job of designing positions that require a clearance, has the potential of saving taxpayer dollars. Today, we will also be considering a related measure authored by Chairman King, H.R. 3361, the Department of Homeland Security Insider Threat and Mitigation Act of 2015. It is timely, as a survey published by Federal Times yesterday reflected that 45% of federal agencies have employees or contractors that tried to access or take unauthorized data over the last year. The final 2 bills under consideration tackle longstanding bipartisan goals of providing better support for the national network of fusion centers in important ways. I urge my colleagues to join me in support of all of the legislation being considered today. I thank the Chairman. I yield back the balance of my time.
Thank you, Ranking Member Higgins. Other members of the subcommittee are reminded that opening statements may be submitted for the record. By agreement between the Chairman and the Ranking Member, the subcommittee, by unanimous consent, shall use an amendment roster today.
Reserving the right to object, I will not object. Would the Chair please explain our agreement regarding the amendment roster, and I yield to the Chair.
I thank the gentleman and all subcommittee members for agreeing to the use of an amendment roster. We have agreed that the bills be open to amendment at any point and that we shall take up amendments in the order listed on the roster. The Chair will allow members to offer amendments listed on the roster out of order to the extent practicable and in a manner not prohibited by House or committee rules. Amendments not listed on the roster may be considered at the conclusion of consideration of the roster.
I thank the Chair for this explanation and withdraw my reservation.
I now call up H.R. 3361, the Department of Homeland Security Insider Threat and Mitigation Act of 2015. The bill was circulated in advance and printed copies are available. The clerk shall designate the bill.
H.R. 3361.
Without objection, the first reading is dispensed with and the bill is considered read. and open to amendment at any point. I have an amendment in the nature of a substitute. The clerk shall report the amendment.
Amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 3361 offered by Mr. King.
Without objection, the reading is dispensed with, and the amendment in the nature of a substitute shall be considered base text for purposes of the amendment. The amendment in the nature of a substitute was noticed to committee members in compliance with committee rules. I now recognize myself for 5 minutes to explain the amendment in the nature of a substitute. But since I covered the purpose and key elements of the bill in my opening statement, and I add that the ANS simply adds a one-time reporting requirement on the Insider Threat Program and clarifies definition within the bill. Is there any further discussion on the amendment in the nature of a substitute? There being no further discussion of the amendment in the nature of a substitute, the committee will move to consideration of the amendments to the amendment in the nature of a substitute. There are no amendments listed on the roster. Are there any amendments to the amendment in the nature of a substitute? There being no amendments, the question now occurs on agreeing to the amendment in the nature of a substitute. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed signify by saying no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the amendment in the nature of a substitute is agreed to. The question now occurs on reporting H.R. 3361 as amended to the full committee with a favorable recommendation. All those in favor signify by saying aye. 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 All those opposed signify by saying no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the motion is agreed to. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table, and staff is authorized to make any technical and conforming changes. I now call up H.R. 3350, the Know the CBRN Terrorism Threats to Transportation Act, introduced by the gentleman from New York, Ranking Member Higgins. The bill was circulated in advance, and printed copies are available. The clerk shall designate the bill.
H.R. 3350.
Without objection, the first reading is dispensed with, and the bill is considered read and open to amendments at any point. The chair now recognizes Ranking Member Higgins to speak on his bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the opportunity to consider my bill today. Terrorist and militant groups have expressed interest in using weapons of mass destruction, especially those utilizing chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear, known as CBRN, agents or materials. The Department of Energy plans to begin transporting highly enriched uranium liquid from Canada to South Carolina next year. An attack on one of these trucks would have obvious and devastating consequences. Despite these risks, the Department of Energy is relying on an analysis of this route that is outdated and does not reflect the threats we face today. My bill would direct the Department of Homeland Security's Office of Intelligence and Analysis to conduct an assessment of the risk associated with the transportation of chemical, biological, nuclear, and radiological materials. The bill also mandates the Office of Intelligence and Analysis consult with the heads of other federal agencies so that the assessment is informed by the most current information about Homeland Security threats. This bill would direct the office to share this information with relevant federal agencies. This bill would ensure the Department of Energy has the information it needs when considering the wisdom of transporting dangerous material through high-risk areas throughout the United States. I urge my colleagues to join me in support of this bill. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back the balance of my time.
Is there any further discussion on the bill? There being no further discussion of the bill, the subcommittee will move to consideration of the amendments. There are no amendments listed on the roster. Are there any amendments to the bill? There being no amendments, the question now occurs on agreeing to the bill H.R. 3350. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All those opposed signify by saying no. The opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the bill is agreed to. The question now occurs on reporting the bill H.R. 3350 to the full committee with a favorable recommendation. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed signify by saying no. The opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the motion is agreed to. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table, and staff is authorized to make any technical and conforming changes. I now call up H.R. 3505, the Department of Homeland Security Clearance Management and Administration Act, introduced by the gentleman from Mississippi, the ranking member, Mr. Thompson. The bill was circulated in advance, and printed copies are available. The clerk shall designate the bill.
H.R. 3505.
Without objection, the first reading is dispensed with, and the bill is considered read and open to amendment at any point. Does any member wish to speak or be recognized on the bill? There being no further discussion of the bill, the subcommittee will move to consideration of amendments. There are no amendments listed. Are there any amendments to the bill? There being no amendments, the question now occurs in agreeing to the bill H.R. 3505. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. Opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the bill is agreed to. The question now occurs in reporting the bill H.R. 3505 to the full committee with a favorable recommendation. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. Opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the motion is agreed to. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table, and staff is authorized to make any technical informing changes. I now call up H.R. 3503, the Department of Homeland Security Support to Fusion Centers Act of 2015, introduced by the gentlewoman from Arizona, Ms. McSally. The bill was circulated in advance, and printed copies are available. The clerk shall designate the bill.
H.R. 3503.
Without objection, the first reading is dispensed with, and the bill is considered read and open to amendment at any point. Does any member wish to be recognized to speak on the bill? There being no further discussion of the bill, the subcommittee will move to consideration of the amendments. There are no amendments listed on the roster. Are there any amendments to the bill? There being no amendments, the question now occurs in agreeing to the bill H.R. 3503. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. Opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the bill is agreed to. The question now occurs in reporting the bill H.R. 3503 to the full committee with a favorable recommendation. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. Opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, the motion is agreed to. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table, and staff is authorized to make any technical and conforming changes. Finally, I call up the committee print of the Fusion Center Enhancement Act of 2015. The text was circulated in advance. Printed copies are available. The clerk shall designate the committee print.
Committee print, Fusion Center Enhancement Act of 2015.
Without objection, the first reading is dispensed with, and the committee print is considered read and open to amendment at any point. Does any member wish to be recognized to speak on the committee print? There being no further discussion of the committee print, the subcommittee will move to consideration of the amendments. There are no amendments listed on the roster. Are there any amendments to the committee print? There being no amendments, the question now occurs in agreeing to the committee print. All in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the committee print is agreed to. Question now occurs in reporting the committee print to the full committee with a favorable recommendation. All in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the motion is agreed to. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table, and staff is authorized to make any technical and conforming changes. In closing, I would like to thank the members and the staff on both sides for the bipartisan legislation approved by the subcommittee. And as always, I thank the ranking member for his cooperation and bipartisan approach. I look forward to continuing this effort as we move the bills to the full committee for consideration. There being no further business, the Subcommittee on Counterterrorism and Intelligence stands adjourned.
Thank you, Peter.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you.